The dust storm hit the Arizona desert with the fury of something alive and angry. Lily Cortez had seen the signs all morning. The strange copper color bleeding into the southern sky, the nervous behavior of the horses, the way the roadrunners had disappeared into whatever shelter they could find. By noon, the wall of brown was visible on the horizon, rolling toward her way station like a biblical plague. At 14, Lily had lived her entire life in the Sonoran Desert, and she knew that arguing with desert weather was like arguing with death itself, pointless and dangerous. She quickly secured everything that could blow away, drove the horses and mule into the small barn, and checked that the water barrels were covered and protected. The way station her father had built was solid, thick adobe walls that could withstand wind and sand, but even the best shelter needed preparation. Her father. The thought of him brought the familiar ache, still sharp even a year after cholera had taken him. Miguel Cortez had been a bridge builder in his own way, running the way station with fairness and respect for all travelers, white settlers, Mexican vaqueros, Chinese laborers heading to railroad work, and yes, even the occasional Apache who came to trade rather than raid. He'd taught Lily Spanish and English, desert survival and human compassion, how to shoot straight and when to extend mercy instead. The desert makes everyone equal, Mija, he used to say. Out here we all need the same things, water, shade, and the kindness of strangers. Never forget that. Lily had kept the way station running after his death through sheer determination and the help of occasional travelers who remembered her father's kindness. The stage line still stopped twice a week, bringing news, supplies, and a small payment for maintaining the station. It wasn't much of a life for a 14-year-old girl, but it was hers, and she'd be damned if she'd give it up. The dust storm struck with full force just as Lily finished her preparations. Visibility dropped to nothing, and the wind howled like wolves. She retreated into the main building, stuffing cloth under the door and around the shuttered windows to keep out the choking dust. Then she waited, as there was nothing else to do when the desert decided to remind you who was really in charge. The storm raged for 3 hours. When it finally passed, leaving an eerie stillness in its wake, Lily ventured outside to assess the damage. Sand had piled against the walls, some roof tiles were displaced and tumbleweeds were everywhere, but the structures were intact and the water barrels had held. She'd survived another desert tantrum. It was while clearing sand from around the barn that Lily heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the post-storm quiet. A low groan, almost inaudible, coming from behind the barn where the desert scrub grew thick. Lily grabbed the rifle she'd left by the door, her father's Winchester, which she could handle reasonably well despite her small frame, and approached cautiously. What she found made her stomach drop. A man lay in the sand, partially buried by the storm. But he wasn't just lying there, he was tied there. Heavy rope bound his wrists together and was staked to the ground. His ankles were similarly bound and staked. He'd been left spread-eagled in the desert, positioned where he'd have no shelter from sun or storm. Someone had wanted him to die slowly and painfully. As Lily got closer, she could see he was Apache, young, maybe 19 or 20, with the lean, muscular build of a warrior. His face was crusted with sand and blood, his lips cracked and bleeding from exposure. He wore traditional clothing, now torn and dusty, and she could see bruises and wounds suggesting he'd been beaten before being staked out. His eyes flickered open as Lily approached, and she saw them widen slightly with surprise, with wariness, with the desperate hope of someone who'd given up on living but suddenly saw a chance. He tried to speak, but only a croak came out. His eyes moved to the canteen at her belt, and the plea in them was unmistakable. Lily knew the situation she was in. Apache had raided settlements across Arizona territory for decades. The wars between Apache bands and the army, settlers, and Mexican forces had been brutal and unforgiving. Just last month, a ranch 15 miles north had been attacked, and 3 people had died. The territory was a powder keg, and helping an Apache warrior could mark her as a traitor, could put her in danger from her own people. But as she looked at him, at a human being staked out to die like an animal, suffering from thirst and exposure, she heard her father's voice. "The desert makes everyone equal, Mija. We all need the same things." Lily made her decision. She knelt beside him and uncapped her canteen, carefully lifting his head to give him water. He drank desperately, and she had to pull back to keep him from making himself sick. "Slowly," she said in Spanish, then tried the few Apache words her father had taught her. Shah, slowly. Recognition flickered in his eyes. She'd used his language, had shown some respect for his culture. He nodded slightly and drank more carefully as she allowed him another sip. "Who did this to you?" Lily asked in Spanish, knowing he probably understood it even if he didn't speak much English. "¿Quién hizo esto?" He managed to speak, his voice rough and hoarse. "Soldados. Buffalo soldiers. I was scouting. They ambushed me. Their sergeant, he say this is revenge for the skirmish at Coyote Springs. Leave me here as message." Lily knew about Coyote Springs. 2 weeks ago, an Apache band had ambushed a patrol of Buffalo soldiers, black cavalrymen who'd been stationed in the territory. 3 soldiers had died, and the army was furious, offering rewards for information about the warriors involved. "Were you at Coyote Springs?" Lily asked. His eyes met hers directly. "No, I was hunting miles away. But soldiers, they do not care about truth. They see Apache, they see enemy. Sergeant Dawson, he want revenge, want to look strong to his men. Truth not matter to him." Lily studied his face, using the skills her father had taught her for reading people. She saw anger, yes, but also a bone-deep honesty. She saw someone who'd been treated unjustly, and who knew it, but who hadn't lost his dignity despite the torture. She pulled her knife from her belt. His eyes widened, and she saw him tense, preparing for death. But instead of violence, she cut the rope binding his wrists. "I'm getting you out of here," she said firmly. "Then you're going to tell me the whole story, and we're going to figure out what to do next." His expression showed shock, disbelief, and something that might have been the beginning of tears. "Why? You are white. I am enemy." "Why you help?" "Because you're a human being who's been treated like an animal, and that's wrong no matter who does it." Lily moved to cut the bonds on his ankles. "And because my father taught me that in the desert, we help people who need help. That's just what decent folks do." She helped him to his feet, and he nearly collapsed. Lily was small and he was much larger, but she got her shoulder under his arm and half carried, half dragged him toward the way station. Every step was a struggle. He was weak from exposure and dehydration, and she was working at the limit of her strength. They made it inside just as the sun reached its brutal afternoon peak. Lily settled him on a bench and began assessing his condition with the practical medical knowledge her father had taught her. Dehydration, exposure, rope burns on his wrists and ankles, bruises and cuts from the beating. Nothing that would kill him if treated properly, but he'd need rest, water, and food to recover. As she worked, cleaning wounds, bandaging rope burns, preparing weak broth that his stomach could handle, he watched her with an expression of wonder. "Your father, he teach you our language?" he asked in halting English. "A little. He traded with Apache sometimes. Said if you're going to share space with people, you should at least try to understand their words." Lily handed him a cup of broth. "What's your name?" "I am called Running Wolf, of the Chiricahua Apache." He paused. "Your name?" Lily Cortez. "This is my father's way station." "Was my father's. He died last year. He was good man to teach you to see people, not just enemies." Running Wolf drank the broth slowly, color already beginning to return to his face. "You understand what you do? What danger this brings you?" "I understand that those soldiers are going to come back. They'll want to know what happened to their prisoner, and they'll be angry." Lily sat down across from him, suddenly feeling the weight of her decision. "But I couldn't just leave you there to die. I couldn't be that person. When they come, tell them you never saw me. Tell them Storm must have freed the ropes. I escaped. They will believe Dust Storm. They will not punish you." Lily shook her head. "They'll know someone helped you. The ropes were cut cleanly. That doesn't happen in a storm. And even if they believed it, lying feels wrong. I made my choice. I'll stand by it. You are very young to be so brave. Or so foolish." But he smiled slightly as he said it. "In my people's way, you have saved my life. This creates obligation, sacred bond. I owe you life debt now. My honor is bound to you. You don't owe me anything. Just survive, okay? Get better, get back to your people, and try to stay away from soldiers who don't care about justice." They spent the rest of the afternoon in careful companionship. Running Wolf told her about the increasing desperation of his people, being pushed onto reservations with bad land and broken promises, watching their traditional ways of life destroyed, seeing their children taken to distant schools to be civilized. He spoke of warriors who wanted to fight and elders who wanted to negotiate. of a people caught between resistance and surrender. Lily told him about the way station, about her father's dreams of it being a place where different peoples could meet peacefully, about her determination to keep it running despite the loneliness and constant challenges. As evening approached, they discussed his departure. Running Wolf was still weak, but insisted he needed to leave soon. "If soldiers come tomorrow, it better you be alone. Easier for you to deny helping if I am not here. Where will you go?" "My people's camp is 2 days north in the mountains. If I leave at night, travel carefully, I can make it." He looked at her seriously. "Lily Cortez, what you do today will not be forgotten. I will tell my people about the way station keeper's daughter who shows mercy when others show only cruelty. This matters." Lily packed supplies for him: dried meat, bread, 2 full canteens of precious water, some medical supplies. She also gave him one of her father's old shirts and pants, so he'd look less distinctively Apache from a distance if anyone spotted him. As the sun set and he prepared to leave, Running Wolf spoke formally, placing his hand over his heart. "I swear to you by all spirits my people hold sacred, your kindness will be remembered. If you ever need help, if you are ever in danger, send word. I will come. My people will come. This I promise." Then he slipped out into the desert night, moving with the silent grace of someone who knew the land intimately. Lily watched him disappear into the darkness, and then she sat on her porch, looking at the stars and wondering what the morning would bring. She didn't have to wait long to find out. As the sun rose the next day, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson, Lily was drawing water from her well when she saw them. Armed men on horses, riding in formation toward her way station. She counted quickly: 8 soldiers, buffalo soldiers, led by a man whose posture screamed authority and anger even from a distance. They arrived at her fence, the low adobe wall that marked the boundary of her property, and stopped in an intimidating line. The leader, a sergeant with a scarred face and cold eyes, stared at her with obvious hostility. "Miss," he called out, his voice carrying authority but no warmth. "I'm Sergeant Dawson, United States Army. We need to ask you some questions about an escaped prisoner." "Mind if we come in?" It wasn't really a question. It was a demand wrapped in the thinnest veneer of courtesy. Lily set down her water bucket, wiped her hands on her apron, and walked toward them with her head held high. Her father had taught her that showing fear invited aggression, while showing respect but not subservience often diffused tension. "Good morning, Sergeant," she said clearly. "I'm Lily Cortez. This is my way station. What can I do for you?" Dawson dismounted, his men following suit. They formed a loose semicircle, and Lily felt very small and very alone, surrounded by armed men who looked at her with suspicion and anger. "We had a prisoner staked out about a quarter-mile from here," Dawson said, his voice hard. "Apache warrior, left there to think about his crimes before we came back for him. Storm hit yesterday, and when we returned this morning he was gone. Ropes cut clean. Someone helped him escape." "That's so?" Lily kept her voice neutral. "That's so. And this way station is the only structure within 10 miles. So unless that Apache learned to cut ropes with his teeth and carry off supplies with no hands, somebody here helped him. And I'm guessing that somebody is you." Lily looked at the 8 armed men, at Sergeant Dawson's cold eyes, at the way they'd positioned themselves to intimidate. She thought about Running Wolf, about the brutal unfairness of leaving a man to die without trial or justice. She thought about her father's teachings on mercy and courage, and she made her choice again. "Yes," she said clearly, "I helped him. I found him after the storm, gave him water, cut him free and sent him on his way. And I'd do it again." The silence that followed was deafening. Dawson's face went from angry to furious, and his hand moved toward his sidearm. The other soldiers muttered among themselves, shock and anger in their voices. "You admit it." Dawson's voice was dangerously quiet. "You admit to aiding and abetting an enemy combatant? Do you understand that's treason, girl? That you could be arrested, maybe even hanged? I understand that I saw a human being staked out to die without trial, without justice, without mercy. And I understand that any law that says helping him was wrong is a law that needs to be changed." Lily's voice shook slightly, but she didn't back down. "Did he have a trial, Sergeant? Was he convicted of a crime? Or did you just decide he was guilty because he was Apache and you needed someone to blame?" "He was Apache. That's all the guilt we need." Dawson took a step forward, and Lily forced herself not to step back. His people killed 3 of my men at Coyote Springs. We're at war, girl. You don't give aid and comfort to the enemy. He wasn't at Coyote Springs. He told me he was hunting miles away when it happened. Did you bother to verify that before you decided to execute him? Apache lie. All of them. Dawson's hand was definitely on his pistol now. And so do white girls who betray their own kind. You've made a bad mistake, Miss Cortez. A very bad mistake. Lily's heart pounded, but she stood her ground. The only mistake I see is soldiers who think torture and murder are justice. My father ran this way station for 15 years, treating everyone fairly. White, Mexican, Chinese, Apache. He taught me that you judge people by their actions, not their skin or their tribe. I'm proud to follow his example. Your father's dead, Dawson said coldly. And you're about to learn that pretty words don't protect you from consequences. Men, search the station. Look for evidence of where the Apache went, what supplies she gave him. And keep an eye on the girl. She's under arrest for aiding the enemy. As Dawson's soldiers moved to search her property, Lily felt real fear for the first time. She'd stood up for what was right, but righteousness wouldn't stop these men if they decided to hurt her or worse. She was alone, 14 years old, with no protection except her conscience. But as the soldiers spread out to search, something caught Lily's attention. Movement on the ridge to the north, then on the ridge to the south, then emerging from the desert scrub on all sides. Figures on horseback coming from every direction, converging on her way station in complete silence. Apache warriors. Dozens of them. And at their head, looking healthier than he had any right to after yesterday, was Running Wolf. Sergeant Dawson saw them too, and his hand moved to his rifle. Well, looks like your Apache friend brought reinforcements. That's going to make this interesting. But as more and more warriors appeared, Lily counted at least 40, maybe 50, it became clear that interesting was an understatement. The Buffalo soldiers were outnumbered 5-1, surrounded, and clearly outmaneuvered. This wasn't going to be a fight. This was going to be a massacre, unless someone stopped it. Running Wolf rode forward slowly, hands visible, posture non-threatening despite the armed warriors behind him. He spoke to Lily in careful English, loud enough for everyone to hear. Lily Cortez, daughter of Miguel Cortez, who showed honor to all peoples. You saved my life yesterday. You showed mercy when you could have shown hate. You risked yourself for stranger, for enemy, because you believe in justice more than you believe in easy revenge. My people know this. We come to stand with you. To say this girl is under our protection. Any who harm her harm us all. An older Apache warrior rode up beside Running Wolf, clearly someone of importance judging by his bearing and the deference others showed him. He spoke in Apache and Running Wolf translated. This is Nachi, war chief of our band. He says we do not seek war today. We seek justice. This girl shows our people are not invisible, that we are human beings worthy of mercy. For this she has earned respect and protection. Sergeant Dawson, you want to arrest her? You do so over our bodies. The standoff hung in the desert air, tense and dangerous. Dawson's men had their weapons ready, but they were clearly terrified. The Apache warriors sat motionless, patient, waiting to see what would happen. Lily stepped forward, her voice carrying across the space between the two groups. Please, everyone, stop. Sergeant Dawson, these warriors didn't come here to fight. They came to protect me, because I showed kindness to one of their own. That's all. And Running Wolf, I appreciate your help, but I don't want anyone dying over this. Let's all just calm down and talk like reasonable people. Reasonable? Dawson's laugh was bitter. Girl, you're a traitor and these are hostiles. There's nothing reasonable about this situation. Then make it reasonable. Lily looked him in the eye. You could arrest me, sure. But then what? These warriors will fight. Your men will die. They'll die. I'll probably die. And for what? Because I gave water to a man dying of thirst. Is that really worth all this blood? Before Dawson could answer, another voice cut through the tension, a voice with the ring of absolute authority. That's an excellent question, Sergeant. And one I'd very much like to hear you answer. Everyone turned to see a new group of riders approaching from the east, Army cavalry, but led by an officer wearing a colonel's insignia. The man was older, perhaps 50, with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. He rode directly into the center of the standoff, assessing the situation with sharp, intelligent eyes. Colonel Braddock, Dawson stammered, clearly not expecting superior officers. "Sir, I can explain." "I certainly hope you can, Sergeant. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've created an international incident." Braddock dismounted and turned to Lily. "Young lady, I'm Colonel Braddock, commander of Fort Lowell. I'd be obliged if you'd tell me exactly what happened here. Start from the beginning and don't leave anything out." Lily told the story, finding Running Wolf, her decision to help him, Dawson's arrival and threats. She left nothing out, including her admission that she'd knowingly aided an Apache warrior. When she finished, Braddock turned to Running Wolf. "And you? What's your version?" Running Wolf told his story. Being captured without cause, beaten, staked out to die, Lily's mercy. He also explained, through Nachi's confirmation, that he hadn't been at Coyote Springs and that the warriors who were could be accounted for elsewhere. Braddock listened to everything, then turned to Dawson with cold fury. "Sergeant, did you verify this man's involvement in the Coyote Springs attack before you decided to execute him without trial?" "Sir, he was Apache, and that's not an answer to my question." "Did you verify his involvement?" "No, sir, but—" "Then you committed an act of torture and attempted murder against a potentially innocent man, brought shame to the United States Army, and nearly started a war that would have killed good men on both sides." Braddock's voice was ice. "You're under arrest, Sergeant. You'll face court-martial for exceeding your authority and conduct unbecoming." He turned to Lily next. "Miss Cortez, what you did was technically illegal. However, given the circumstances, an innocent man being tortured without trial, I'm inclined to view your actions as a matter of conscience rather than treason. You won't face charges." Finally, he addressed the Apache warriors, speaking with genuine respect. "Chief Nachi, Running Wolf, I apologize on behalf of the United States Army for what happened to your warrior. What Sergeant Dawson did was wrong, and he'll answer for it. I hope this can be resolved without further violence." Nachi spoke in Apache, and Running Wolf translated. "The chief says, this is good. We do not want war. We want only to live in peace, to protect our people, to be treated as human beings. Girl who shows mercy. She reminds us that such things are still possible. We will remember this." As the tension finally began to dissipate, as soldiers and warriors slowly relaxed their grips on weapons, Lily felt her knees go weak. She sat down hard on her porch steps, shaking with released fear and exhaustion. Running Wolf dismounted and approached her carefully. "You see? One act of mercy. One person choosing right over easy and everything changes. You did this, Lily Cortez. You stopped a war today. You showed both sides that another way is possible." "I just didn't want to see you die," Lily said weakly. "That is why it mattered. Not grand gesture, just simple human kindness. But simple human kindness is rarest thing in this desert. It shines bright when it appears." As the various groups began to disperse, Dawson being led away in custody, Apache warriors heading back to their territories, Colonel Braddock preparing to return to Fort Lowell, Lily sat on her porch and thought about her father. She'd kept his way station running. She'd honored his teachings about treating all people with dignity. And she'd discovered that sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was also the right thing. The next day would bring new challenges, new visitors, new tests of everything she'd proven she believed in. But for now, Lily was just grateful to be alive, to have stood for what was right, and to have learned that mercy, even in the harshest desert, could bloom into something beautiful. She'd saved a captive warrior from his bonds. The next day, armed men had appeared at her fence. But she'd stood firm, and in standing firm, she'd proved that one person's courage could indeed change the world. The days following the standoff brought changes to Lily's life that rippled outward like water from a stone thrown into a still pond. Colonel Braddock, true to his word, had taken Sergeant Dawson into custody for court-martial, but he'd also left 2 soldiers, Corporal James Mitchell and Private Benjamin Hughes, stationed at the way station for Miss Cortez's protection, as he'd officially termed it. Unofficially, Lily suspected he wanted observers to make sure neither side violated the fragile peace that had been established. Mitchell was a quiet man in his 30s, a veteran who'd seen too much fighting and seemed relieved to be assigned to a peaceful post. Hughes was younger, maybe 22, and had the kind of idealism that hadn't yet been beaten out of him by frontier life. Both men treated Lily with awkward respect, clearly unsure how to interact with a 14-year-old girl who'd somehow become the center of a potential war. "Miss Cortez," Mitchell said on their third morning at the station, "I wanted to apologize. For Dawson, for how things almost went. A lot of us soldiers, we've seen so much fighting that we forget that not every Apache is an enemy, not every situation needs violence." Lily, who was preparing breakfast for everyone, paused in her work. "You don't need to apologize for Dawson's actions, Corporal. You're not responsible for what other men choose to do. Maybe not, but I served under him. Never spoke up when he talked about Indians like they were animals instead of people. Silence can be its own kind of wrong, I'm learning." Before Lily could respond, Hughes called out from his watch position by the window. "Riders coming. 3 of them from the north. Look like. I think they might be Apache." Lily and Mitchell moved to the window. Sure enough, 3 riders were approaching, Running Wolf and 2 others moving at an easy pace that suggested they came in peace rather than for war. Mitchell's hand moved toward his rifle, but Lily shook her head. "They're not here to cause trouble. Running Wolf gave his word about that. You sure about that, miss?" "I'm sure. I learned from my father that people who give their word and mean it have a different look in their eyes than people who plan to break it. Running Wolf means what he says." The 3 Apache warriors rode up to the fence and dismounted. Running Wolf approached with the 2 others following respectfully behind. "Lily Cortez," he called out in his careful English, "we come as friends. We bring gift and we bring message." Lily stepped outside, Mitchell and Hughes trailing behind her like nervous bodyguards. "You're always welcome here, Running Wolf. What's the message?" "First, gift." One of the other warriors, an older man with the bearing of someone important, stepped forward and presented Lily with a beautifully woven basket. Running Wolf translated his words. "This is Ono, medicine man of our people. He makes this basket for you. It shows 4 directions, the sacred symbols of our people. He says you are bridge now between peoples, and bridge must be strong in all directions. Basket reminds you of this sacred responsibility." Lily accepted the basket with genuine awe. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. Intricate geometric patterns woven with such precision that it seemed impossible it was made by hand. "Please tell him it's beautiful. I'm honored." The medicine man spoke again, and Running Wolf translated. "He says also he puts blessing in basket. Protection blessing. While you keep this basket in your home, our spirits protect you. This is sacred gift not given lightly." "And the message?" Lily asked, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift, but curious about what else had brought them here. Running Wolf's expression grew more serious. "Message is this. Word has spread among Apache bands about what you did, about the way station where white girl shows mercy to Apache warrior. Many are curious, many are skeptical, many are interested. Chief Cochise himself has heard the story. He sends word that he wishes to meet you, to see for himself if the stories are true." "Cochise?" Mitchell interjected, his voice sharp with concern. "The Cochise?" "Miss Cortez, that's one of the most powerful Apache chiefs in the territory. Meeting him could be dangerous, or it could be opportunity," Running Wolf replied evenly. "Chief Cochise is old now, tired of war. He seeks peace, but he needs to believe peace is possible, that whites can be trusted to keep their word. You, Lily Cortez, you are proof that some whites still have honor. He wants to see this with his own eyes." Lily felt the weight of the request. Cochise was legendary, a warrior chief who'd fought the Mexican army, the U.S. Army, and anyone else who threatened his people. He was also said to be a man of his word, someone who kept promises and expected others to do the same. A meeting with him could be monumentally important or monumentally dangerous. "When?" she asked. "And where?" 3 days from now at the spring in Coyote Canyon. Neutral ground. Sacred place where violence is forbidden by old laws. You would come with small group. You, Running Wolf, to translate, and maybe your soldier guards if you want them. Chief Cochise brings same small number. Just talking, no weapons drawn, no threat, just meeting of minds." Mitchell was already shaking his head. "Colonel Braddock would never approve this. It's too dangerous." "Then maybe we don't tell the colonel until after," Lily said, surprising herself with the suggestion. "This is my way station, my land, my choice. If there's a chance to help build real peace, I should take it. That's what my father would have done. Your father was a grown man who knew how to handle himself in dangerous situations," Hughes pointed out gently. "You're 14 years old, Miss Cortez. No offense, but nothing. I'm 14 years old, and I've been running this way station alone for a year. I've handled rattlesnakes, flash floods, dust storms, and angry sergeants who wanted to arrest me for doing the right thing. I think I can handle a conversation with an Apache chief. Lily's voice was firm. I'm going. You two can come if you want, or stay here if you prefer, but I'm going. The two soldiers looked at each other, clearly unhappy but also clearly recognizing that Lily wasn't going to be talked out of this. If you're going, we're going, Mitchell finally said. But Lord help us all if this goes sideways. The next 3 days were spent in preparation. Lily made sure the way station was stocked and secure. The stage would be coming through the day after the meeting, and she needed everything ready. She also thought carefully about what she'd say to Cochise, how she'd represent not just herself, but the possibility of peace between peoples who'd been at war for generations. Running Wolf visited twice more during those 3 days, each time bringing news and cultural guidance. Chief Cochise respects directness, he told her on his second visit. Do not lie, do not exaggerate, do not tell him what you think he wants to hear. Tell truth even when truth is uncomfortable. This is Apache way. I can do that. Truth is easier to remember than lies anyway. Also important, do not show fear. He will test you. See if you are strong enough to be worthy of respect. If you show weakness, he will dismiss you. If you show strength with respect, he will listen. On the morning of the meeting, Lily dressed carefully, not in her finest clothes, which would seem like trying too hard, but in practical clothing that showed she was someone who worked, who understood hardship, who wasn't pretending to be something she wasn't. She took the sacred basket Ono had given her, figuring it would demonstrate her respect for Apache culture. Mitchell and Hughes were armed but nervous, and Running Wolf arrived with the 2 warriors who'd accompanied him before. The 6 of them rode north into the mountains, following trails that Lily had never traveled, heading deeper into territory that was still predominantly Apache despite the Army's best efforts. Coyote Canyon was a stunning location, a hidden valley with a natural spring creating a small oasis in the harsh desert landscape. Ancient petroglyphs marked the rocks around the spring, symbols that predated even Apache presence in the region. It was a sacred place. You could feel it in the stillness, in the way sound seemed muffled and distant. Cochise was already there, waiting. The legendary chief was older than Lily expected, perhaps 60, his face deeply lined, his long hair showing significant grey. But his eyes were sharp and assessing, and his bearing suggested a man who hadn't lost an ounce of the authority that had made him one of the most feared and respected leaders in the Southwest. He was accompanied by 4 warriors, all clearly chosen for both their fighting ability and their loyalty. Running Wolf dismounted and spoke in Apache, making formal introductions. Cochise listened, his gaze never leaving Lily's face, studying her with the intensity of someone reading a book in a language they were just learning. Finally he spoke, and Running Wolf translated. Chief Cochise says you are very young. He wonders if the stories are exaggeration, if you are truly the one who freed Running Wolf knowing the consequences, or if perhaps your father's shadow makes you seem larger than you are. Lily felt the test in the words. He was probing, seeing if she'd get defensive or if she'd show the strength he was looking for. She met his eyes steadily and spoke clearly, waiting for Running Wolf to translate each sentence. Chief Cochise, I'm young, yes, but age doesn't determine whether someone knows right from wrong. My father taught me well before he died, but the choice to free Running Wolf was mine alone. I made it knowing soldiers might arrest me, knowing some whites would call me traitor, knowing it could cost me everything. I made it anyway because leaving a man to die of thirst when I had water, that would have made me less than human. And I refuse to be less than human just because it's easier or safer. Cochise's expression didn't change, but Lily saw something flicker in his eyes. Interest, perhaps, or the beginning of respect. He spoke again and Running Wolf translated. He says, many whites speak pretty words about honor and justice, but when tested, when choosing right costs something, they choose safety instead. He asks, what did your choice cost you? What did you lose by helping Apache warrior? Lily thought about that carefully before answering. I lost the illusion of safety. Before that day, I could pretend that if I just kept my head down and didn't make waves, I'd be left alone to run my way station in peace. After that day, I understood that peace built on looking away from injustice isn't real peace. It's just delayed conflict. I also lost the luxury of easy answers. Now I have to think about every choice, weigh every action against my conscience. That's harder than just following rules or doing what's expected. But what did you gain? Cochise asked through Running Wolf, and Lily heard something new in the chief's tone, genuine curiosity. I gained the ability to look at myself in the mirror and respect who I see. I gained proof that my father's teachings weren't just words. They were principles I could actually live by when tested. And I gained something I didn't expect. I gained friends I never would have known, and understanding I never would have found. If I'd chosen fear over courage, Cochise stood then, moving with the careful grace of an older warrior, whose body had been through countless battles. He walked to the spring, gestured for Lily to join him, and the two of them stood looking at the clear water bubbling up from deep in the earth. He spoke in Apache, his voice taking on a tone that suggested he was sharing something important. Running Wolf translated carefully. He says, "Water is sacred to Apache people. In desert, water is life itself. Without water, we die. With water, we can survive even the harshest places." He says you understood this when you gave Running Wolf water. You understood that in desert, some things are more important than politics or war, or which tribe someone belongs to. You understood that life itself is sacred, that water must be shared with those who thirst, regardless of who they are. Cochise scooped water in his hands and drank, then gestured for Lily to do the same. She knelt, cupped her hands and drank from the spring. The water was cold and pure, tasting of minerals and stone, and somehow the act of drinking together felt ceremonial, significant. The chief spoke again, and this time his words came through Running Wolf with weight and formality. He says, "Lily Cortez, daughter of Miguel Cortez, who showed honor to all peoples, you have proven yourself worthy of respect. You stand at crossroads now. You can return to your way station and live quietly, hoping to avoid future trouble. Or you can choose different path of bridge builder, path of peacemaker. This path is dangerous. You will be distrusted by both sides sometimes. You will face threats from those who profit from hate. But you will also do great good, will save lives, will show that peace is possible." Lily felt the gravity of the moment. "What exactly are you asking me to do, Chief Cochise?" The chief's response, translated by Running Wolf, was specific and daunting. He asks you to make your way station into true neutral ground, place where Apache and white people can meet safely to talk, to trade, to resolve disputes without violence. He asks you to be mediator, translator of more than just words, translator of hearts and minds. He says there are Apache leaders who want peace, and white leaders who want peace, but they do not trust each other enough to meet. You could be the place they meet, the person they both trust to be fair. That's a lot of responsibility for a 14-year-old girl running a desert way station, Lily said quietly. Yes, but you have already shown you can carry such responsibility, and you will not be alone. If you accept this path, Apache people will support you. We will spread word that your way station is sacred ground where violence is forbidden. We will bring disputes to you for mediation. We will protect you from those who would silence the voice of peace." Cochise paused, then added something that Running Wolf translated with obvious emotion. He says his daughter would have been your age if she had lived. She died in raid, killed by Mexican soldiers. He thinks about what kind of woman she would have become. He thinks maybe she would have been like you, brave enough to choose right over easy, strong enough to build bridges instead of walls. Lily felt tears burning in her eyes. This legendary warrior chief, who had fought for decades to protect his people, was trusting her, a 14-year-old white girl, with something precious, hope that peace was possible. "I accept," she said firmly. "I'll do everything I can to make my way station a place where people can meet in peace. I can't promise I'll always succeed, or that I'll never make mistakes. But I promise I'll try with everything I have." Cochise extended his hand and Lily took it. His grip was strong despite his age, and his eyes held hers with intensity that felt like a blessing and a challenge combined. He spoke once more, and Running Wolf translated with a slight smile. He says, "Good. Now we see if actions match words. In 1 week there will be meeting at your way station. Apache elders who seek peace, and white settlers who seek peace, and army officers who seek peace. They all come to talk about water rights, grazing lands, safe passage, many chances for conflict, many old wounds to reopen. You will help them find common ground. This is your first test as bridge builder. As they prepared to leave the canyon, Cochise gave Lily one final gift, a small leather pouch containing sacred herbs. Through Running Wolf, he explained that she should burn these herbs before important meetings, that they would help clear minds and open hearts to possibility of understanding. The ride back to the way station was quiet, everyone processing what had happened. Mitchell finally broke the silence. "Miss Cortez, do you understand what you just agreed to? You're going to have the most powerful Apache chief in the territory, sending people to your way station for mediation. The Army's going to want to use you for intelligence. Settlers are going to think you're either a saint or a traitor. This is going to make your life incredibly complicated." "My life was already complicated the moment I cut Running Wolf free," Lily replied. "At least now the complication has purpose. I'm building something instead of just surviving." When they arrived back at the way station, they found Colonel Braddock waiting for them with a contingent of soldiers. Lily's heart sank. Someone must have informed him about the meeting, and now there would be consequences. But Braddock's expression wasn't angry. It was thoughtful, calculating, and perhaps slightly admiring. "Miss Cortez," he said as she dismounted, "I heard about your meeting with Cochise. Some of my scouts keep tabs on his movements. I also heard what you agreed to, making this way station into neutral ground for peace talks. Are you here to arrest me for unauthorized contact with hostile forces, sir?" Lily asked, too tired to be diplomatic. "Hostile forces?" Braddock almost smiled. "Miss Cortez, Cochise hasn't been classified as hostile for 2 years. He's been seeking peace, trying to negotiate fair terms for his people. The problem is finding people on both sides brave enough or crazy enough to actually try to build that peace." He paused. "I think you might be both brave enough and crazy enough, and I think I'd like to support your effort." Lily blinked in surprise. "You would? The Army's job is to keep the peace, Miss Cortez. If peace can be achieved through talking instead of shooting, that's better for everyone. Saves lives, saves money, saves me from writing letters to widows. I can't officially sponsor your peace mediation, but I can make sure you're protected. Make sure the meetings that happen here are respected as neutral ground. Consider it the Army's contribution to your bridge-building project." Over the next week, Lily prepared for the meeting with meticulous care. She cleaned the way station until it gleamed, arranged seating that would put everyone at equal eye level, prepared food that would be acceptable to all parties. She studied her father's notes on mediation and conflict resolution, finding wisdom in his carefully recorded observations about human nature. Running Wolf visited twice to coach her on Apache perspective and customs. "Remember," he said, "Apache elders will test you. They will speak in our language sometimes even though they know English, to see if you become frustrated or impatient. Show respect for our words. Ask for translation when needed. Never pretend to understand when you do. Not." Mitchell and Hughes helped by reaching out to sympathetic settlers, farmers and ranchers who were tired of constant conflict and wanted to find ways to share water and land without violence. "We found 6 families willing to come," Mitchell reported. "They're nervous, but they're willing to try. That's something." The day of the meeting arrived with typical Arizona intensity: blazing sun, air so dry it felt like breathing dust, heat that made everything shimmer in the distance. By mid-morning, people began arriving. The Apache delegation came first, Cochise himself along with 3 other elders and Running Wolf as translator. They surveyed the way station with careful eyes, checking sightlines and escape routes, assessing potential threats with the wariness of people who'd survived by being cautious. The white settlers arrived next. 6 families, some with children, all looking nervous but determined. Lily recognized the Johnsons, who ran a small cattle operation, the Greens, who had a farm near a disputed water source, and the Parkers, whose son had been killed in an Apache raid 2 years ago. That last family's presence was particularly significant. They had every reason to hate Apache people, yet they were here to talk about peace. Finally, Colonel Braddock arrived with 2 junior officers, representing Army interests in regional stability. He nodded respectfully to Cochise, and the chief returned the gesture with equal dignity. Lily stood at the center of her way station's main room, looking at the diverse group assembled there. Apache elders who'd fought for their land for decades, white settlers who'd lost family members to conflict, Army officers trying to maintain order in chaos, and all of them were looking at her, a 14-year-old girl expecting her to somehow help them find common ground. She thought of her father, took a deep breath, and began. Thank you all for coming. I know this isn't easy for any of you. There's a lot of history in this room, a lot of pain, a lot of reasons to distrust each other. But there's also something else. There's the fact that we all have to share this desert, and that means we either figure out how to live together, or we all suffer. She gestured to the table where she'd laid out a map of the region. Chief Cochise, with Running Wolf's help, marked on this map the traditional Apache lands, the places that are sacred to your people, the places where you've hunted and lived for generations. Settlers, I asked you to mark the places you need for your farms and ranches to survive. Harmy? Colonel Braddock provided information about territory the government claims as federal land. Everyone leaned forward to look at the map. Lily had used different colors to mark each group's territories, and the overlaps were obvious and extensive. Now, the question isn't who has the right to this land. That's a question lawyers and politicians will argue about forever. The question is, can we find ways to share what we must share, respect what each side needs most, and stop killing each other over resources that should be enough for everyone if we're just smart about how we use them? One of the settlers, Mr. Parker, who'd lost his son, spoke up, his voice rough with emotion. How am I supposed to share anything with people who killed my boy? How am I supposed to sit here and talk peace when my son's buried on a hill overlooking land they claim is theirs? Before Lily could respond, Cochise spoke and Running Wolf translated. Chief says he understands your pain. He has buried children too. Buried daughter, buried 2 sons, buried grandchildren. All killed in this conflict. All dead because whites and Apache cannot find peace. He asks you, does your son's death honor by continuing to kill, or would it honor him more to make world where other fathers do not bury children? Parker's face worked with emotion, anger and grief warring visibly. My son. He was just 17. He was checking water levels at the creek and they were young warriors, Cochise said through Running Wolf, his voice heavy. Young men angry about their own losses, their own pain. They saw White Boy as enemy, not as person. This is what war does. Makes us forget that enemy is also father's son, mother's child. This is why we must find peace. So young men on both sides stop dying for old hatreds. The room was silent, the weight of shared grief settling over everyone. Then Mrs. Green, the farmer's wife, spoke up. The creek that runs through our land, we need water for our crops. But I know Apache people need that water too. How do we share it fairly? That's my question. Running Wolf translated for one of the Apache elders, who responded at length. He says, Apache people understand irrigation, understand farming. We grew corn and beans long before whites came to this desert. We are willing to establish water schedule. Some days for white farmers, some days for Apache families, some days sacred where water flows freely for all. We do not need to fight over water. We need only to agree on fairness and the cattle. Mr. Johnson asked. My herd needs rangeland, needs access to grass and water. But I've been told Apache people see free-ranging cattle as fair game for hunting. Another Apache elder spoke, and Running Wolf translated. He says, cattle that wander onto Apache land with no one watching, yes, sometimes young men hunt them as they would hunt deer. But if you mark your cattle, if we agree on boundaries, if you respect our hunting grounds and we respect your ranch lands, there is no need for conflict. He says his people are willing to respect marked boundaries if whites respect them too. The conversation continued for 3 hours, with Lily mediating, clarifying, asking questions that helped each side understand the other's perspective. Slowly, painfully, common ground began to emerge. Not perfect solutions, not everything anyone wanted, but possibilities for coexistence that didn't require anyone's extinction. Colonel Braddock, who'd been mostly silent, finally spoke up. What I'm hearing is that most of the conflicts come from misunderstanding and lack of communication. If we had a system where disputes could be brought to neutral ground before they escalate to violence, where someone trusted by both sides could mediate, he looked at Lily, we might prevent most of the bloodshed. Miss Cortez's way station could serve that purpose, one of the settlers suggested. If we all agreed that this is neutral ground, that disputes brought here are handled fairly. Apache elders agree to this, Running Wolf translated after quick consultation. We declare this place sacred ground. Our young warriors will be told, the way station is protected, violence there is forbidden. Disputes go to Lily Cortez first, war second. As the meeting broke up with people exchanging handshakes and cautious promises to try the new arrangements, Lily felt exhausted but hopeful. It wasn't perfect. There would be violations, misunderstandings, setbacks. But they'd started something, had proven that talking was possible, that common ground could be found. Cochise approached her as he prepared to leave. Through Running Wolf, he said, "You did well, young bridge builder. This is beginning. Hard road ahead, many challenges. But today you showed that different path is possible. My people will remember this." That night, after everyone had left and the way station was quiet except for Mitchell and Hughes on watch, Lily sat on her porch and looked at the stars. She thought about Running Wolf staked out in the desert, about the choice she'd made to cut him free, about how that one decision had led to all of this. A meeting that might have started real peace, relationships built across cultural divides, hope where there'd been only conflict. She'd saved a captive warrior from his bonds. Armed men had appeared at her fence. But instead of ending in violence, it had ended in conversation. Instead of war, there'd been the beginning of understanding. It wasn't enough yet. One meeting didn't undo decades of conflict, but it was a start. And sometimes Lily was learning. Starting was the hardest and most important part. As she drifted off to sleep, she dreamed of her father, and in the dream he was smiling, proud of the daughter who'd taken his teachings and turned them into something real, something that might actually change the world. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, Lily Cortez, the 14-year-old bridge builder of the Arizona desert, slept peacefully, knowing she'd chosen right over easy, and that sometimes that choice was enough.